Welcome to the CineFiles podcast, Mr. Bob. It's the CineFiles podcast. We're back. This is our second podcast ever. I'm Eric Cohen, producer and co-host of the CineFiles. We also have Andre Joseph, co-host of the CineFiles. Say hello, Andre.
Good evening.
There he is. And say hello to Jeffrey Gallashaw, also co-host and the host and producer of Unfinished Business.
Hello, how are all of you out there?
And we have Michael Foltz.
Greetings.
Last week, our first podcast, we talked about our favorite and least favorite films of 2014. And it's been a couple of weeks. We've had the Golden Globes, and we've had the Oscar nomination announcements, which we're going to get into all of that. But first, we thought it might be interesting to talk about some of the films we've most recently seen since we last spoke via the internets 2 weeks ago. Jeff, have you seen anything within the past 2 or 3 weeks that's new or interesting that you might want to share with our listeners?
Well, I've seen plenty, but I'll talk about the ones that I guess really mattered the most to me. I saw Inherent Vice.
I saw it too, but you say your thoughts.
Okay. Inherent Vice, I can't make up if I like it or not, because while it's entertaining, like the book itself, which I read, it's a lot of exposition and a lot of shots of people sitting there talking, which wouldn't be too bad if it wasn't just so confusing where it changes tones constantly. And, I mean, there's a highlight scene which particularly involves Martin Short, that is just so crazy and outrageous, but yet serious. I thought the whole film was going to have that sort of tone, but to me, that is one of the very few scenes where the film comes alive, other than saying, oh, look, it's Owen Wilson playing this role, or there's James Brolin playing that role.
Oh, James Brolin's in it too?
I mean, Josh Brolin, sorry.
Nice job, fact checker.
Hey, I didn't say I was a fact checker.
I agree with you, Jeff. I can't decide. I still can't decide whether I like the film or I just thought it was. I think there's things in it that are very good. I think there are things like when it's funny, it's very funny. I love that whole scene with Martin Short, from when they first introduced Martin Short to when he kind of makes his exit. But yeah, it's a weird film, and it's even strange because it follows the book pretty faithfully.
Yes.
With just a few, subtle changes here and there. But the problem is, what makes the book's all about, Pynchon in general is all about semantics and wordplay. And he loves conspiracies, and he loves conspiracies within conspiracies. And part of the humor is how these conspiracies constantly unfold to a point where it gets so ludicrous and so ridiculous that it's funny. And I felt that in Inherent Vice, it was strange how they had those conspiracies or the mystery unfold, where it's done in such a low-key, subtle way. There was no impact to that, or it wasn't as amusing as it could have been.
Yeah, it was like almost non-existent.
Right, to the point where you were just completely lost. And this is coming from a person that read the book.
It sounds like a typical Pynchon novel.
But I could see how there's a way Paul Thomas Anderson could have directed it in a way where he played up the ridiculousness of what was being revealed and how it was being revealed. But instead, he had people reveal it by just sitting at tables, giving exposition, sitting in a car, giving exposition. And then it would take these turns where, there's a certain something. I don't want to spoil it because Andre, you haven't seen Inherent Vice, right?
I haven't.
Okay.
And I'm dying to see it.
Andre and Mike haven't seen it. There's this particular thing, call it a red herring, whatever, it keeps being brought up. And at one point, it's one thing. Another point, it's something else. Another point, it's literally what its name suggests. And there it should have been very funny how it kept changing from being, I don't know, possibly the mafia to being possibly a heroin cartel to possibly being a consortium of dentists, you know. That reveal should be funny, but instead it was done in such a low-key expository way that you kept forgetting what it was every time they brought it up, and therefore there was no impact every time it changed.
Yeah, I agreed with you. And
Eric, Jeff, I have a question for both of you, which obviously it's not going to reveal any spoilers, but as somebody that's seen the whole P.T. Anderson canon, like we all have, maybe with the exception of Andre, I don't know if he's seen all or not, but how does this compare to some of his previous films?
Punch Drunk Love.
Nah, I could see it.
I would compare it to Punch Drunk Love tonally, because, you know, Inherent Vice is trying to be a comedy, trying to be a satire, but it has these... It reminded me a lot of Altman's The Long Goodbye.
Which is what I think he was striving for a little. Mm-hmm.
Although Altman really nailed the idea that not only was he paying homage to sort of like detective noir, but at the same time he was making fun of that, and he was making fun of West Coast culture at the same time during that period of the 70s. And with Inherent Vice, it's like Anderson's not making any attempt to draw any of these comparisons or comment on them. It's just that it's almost like he relied too much on the characters being eccentric enough that that's all he needed to do and display. That's how it came across to me anyway.
Well, to me, it's like a big budget, almost experimental film, but a skilled experimental film. He knows what he's doing, but it just jumps around in tone so much that, just like Punch Drunk Love, I felt like with Punch Drunk Love, I got it more. Here, I was just generally confused half the time. But it strangely worked.
And I think there were moments for punchlines that there were jokes and gags that seemed to need setups. You know, it's like a joke with a punchline that doesn't have any setup. You just hear the punchline, and so there's no context. And there's a lot of moments like that in Inherent Vice where you're like, okay, this is really weird. Is this supposed to be funny? I'm missing something that was supposed to lead up to this. And there's a lot of moments like that in Inherent Vice. They're just kind of odd in that way. But having said that, it is the cinematography is amazing in the film.
Now, granted, once again, I repeat, I have not seen Inherent Vice yet. I am dying to see this film. But I feel that Paul Thomas Anderson has grown as a filmmaker. He is a much smarter filmmaker with each film he does. But it seems like his intelligence has also made him quirkier. And I think I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Inherent Vice, I didn't dislike Inherent Vice. There's enough good in it that it is worth seeing. But unfortunately, there were so many good films that came out in 2014. That's why it's not good enough for me to meet some of those other films that are more consistent in what they're trying to do. If it was any other year, maybe I would...
I just found this to be, even though each film of his, it seems recently has been more and more challenging, I would say this one by far is the most challenging for an audience if you're really not a fan of his to really get into.
I would agree with that. I concur.
Oh, thank you.
So anyway.
Subject.
Sorry?
Next subject.
Andre, did you see anything recently released or new in the past 2 weeks that our listeners might be interested in hearing your thoughts on?
Well, there are so many films that I saw while trying to catch up this season. The one that stands out for me is Birdman.
Oh, you finally saw it. So what'd you think?
I loved it. You know, everybody talks about the one-take style that Alejandro González Iñárritu was able to do, and he did it to an amazing degree. But for me, it was all about the performances, and I was so happy with Michael Keaton getting the Golden Globe win, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later, but the thing about it was watching him play like this very tortured actor trying to make his comeback and going through this psychological dilemma over the course of the movie, it made me kind of fall in love with the guy again because, recently I went back and I watched Clean and Sober, which was like his first real dramatic performance. And that was a film that really showed his intensity in more serious dramas than the comedies that he was doing at the time. And I feel like the last decade or so, he's just been cashing in for the quick paychecks and playing very low-key kind of parts in independent films. And this one kind of like, you saw a little bit of everything come back. You saw a little bit of Bill Blazkowski from Night Shift, and you saw a little bit of Beetlejuice in there. Like that intensity, but also that darkness that he was able to bring to that character. And also, a lot of people are not talking about Edward Norton, which is surprising, because I thought he was amazing being like the hardcore method actor, and I almost felt like he was playing himself in the movie. And I like the interplay between him and Naomi Watts, which, if you've seen it, it really steals the film at times.
Yeah, I like the film a lot. I wasn't. I think it's slightly overrated. This is my opinion. I still put it in my 10 best. I think it's technically it's very impressive, but I thought it was the kind of story we've seen before. There was nothing there that I didn't feel like I hadn't seen before. Even the Edward Norton character could almost be an alpha male version of the character he played in Death to Smoochie, in a weird kind of way. It's just like I was watching the film. I'm like, okay, I'm watching this. I think it's spectacular to look at. I admire the chutzpah that the director puts into it. I like that Michael Keaton is just going for broke with his performance. But I kept thinking, but I've seen this before. Because if you take away all that razzle-dazzle and everything, what do you have? You have a story that's sort of been told before. And I know that a lot of films are by default not original. But in this case, I just kept thinking, yeah, I've seen this story before. The actor who's reached his peak and is trying to have that final success, and he thinks that this will do it. It's like he'll be taken seriously if he just does this one role. But having said that, I was completely enthralled by the world that was created in that movie.
Well, I think people were kind of attracted to sort of the art imitating life aspect about it because of the fact that he played Batman decades ago. And here he's been, he did direct the film, from what I understand, a couple of years back that really didn't get much play. And that almost made me think there was that parallel between the character he's playing, Regan Thompson, and himself, trying to make comebacks in independent films that really haven't made a lot of money or made a lot of buzz for his career.
Well, see, that's the irony, because in interviews he'll say, this is the character who is the least like him in life.
Right.
So that I found interesting. I actually saw his directorial debut, The Merry Gentleman. It's a very dark film where he plays a hitman. I mean, it's okay, but it's nothing really noteworthy. It's just really seeing Michael Keaton play more of a cold-blooded type, other than his over-the-top turn in that movie, Desperate Measures with Andy Garcia. But, I mean, I really enjoyed Birdman. It's my number 4 on my top 10 of the year. No, actually my number 3 on the top 10 of the year. As I've written in my review of it before, it's just a film that just overtook me, took me on a journey, guided me there, landed smoothly. I applaud the film. I love everything about it. I can see where Eric is coming from, but, it just had a totally different effect for me. I've obviously seen, stories or movies with similar thing, but this, to me, just, I don't know, struck a chord more for me.
Okay, so it's my turn to bring up a film that came out recently that I saw within the past 2 weeks. I think you guys will all be very amused by this. Okay.
Does it have Charles Dance in it?
No. Oh, no, but I did see a Charles Dance movie. Oh, I almost forgot. Yeah, Patrick is this new movie. It's a remake of an Ozploitation picture from the early 80s. It's sort of a Carrie ripoff. Maybe it was the late 70s, early 80s. And I think it was Richard Franklin's first film, the original. Richard Franklin directed Psycho 2 and Road Games. And it's okay. It's not the greatest thing you'll ever see, but it's better than you would think. And the remake is like this overly stylish take on that. But yeah, Charles Dance plays the mad scientist character in this movie. It's on Netflix. It's totally entertaining. It's not you're not going to embarrass yourself after you've watched it. I would recommend it. But that's not the film I wanted to talk about. I saw Into the Woods.
Why?
Because I was curious.
Okay.
Oh, the tables have turned.
I was curious because I've seen the original, not the original. I saw a stage production of it, not the original one.
Were you wearing men's culottes when you saw the stage production?
And it's a really cool musical. You know, it's a total dig at fairy tales. It's sort of Princess Bride and Shrek before that thing existed. It's really adult and grown up. And Into the Woods isn't. The movie itself is not. In fact, I think how they adapted it too literally because it's meant to be stagey. It's meant to look kind of fake. There's meant to be a lot of like breaking the fourth wall and all that stuff. But they took all that out of that, and they even took out all the more sexual innuendo. Like there's a relationship between the Big Bad Wolf and Little Red Riding Hood. It's a lot more sexual in the play than it is in the movie. And there's all sorts of other things they change, which I don't want to spoil, but let's just say that you think the story ends on a fairy tale note, and then something happens where Sondheim basically says, fuck you to anybody who likes fairy tales. Or this big thing, I could best describe it as an apocalyptic ending. And it's meant to, like, you know, as an audience member, you're supposed to sit there and go, holy shit, I can't believe they did this. And it's meant to touch you in a certain way. And they kind of killed that at the end of the movie version, which is too bad because there are certain things about it I did like. I thought were better than I expected.
For instance?
I thought, what's her name? Emily Blunt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought she was good in it. I was surprised. She was actually very good at it. And, you know, and there's like Chris Pine is really interesting in it. Even though he plays this sort of goofy, almost comedic relief character, he actually has a whole number where he sings, and he's actually a good singer.
Oh, well, you just sold it for me then.
And Johnny Depp, it's just gratuitous Johnny Depp. He really didn't need to be in the movie. I mean, he has a number, and that's it. But it's almost like a cameo. He plays the Big Bad Wolf.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is his role bigger or smaller than it is in, spoiler alert, Tusk?
It's bigger in Tusk.
Okay.
Yeah, no, actually, this is the weird thing. In Tusk, his role was absolutely unnecessary. Whereas in Into the Woods, it was absolutely unnecessary for him to play that role. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
Difference.
Mm-hmm.
Tusk, his character should not have been in that movie. Period. Whether it was Johnny Depp or not. Totally awful character.
Well, maybe that was a precursor to Mordecai.
I don't know. What is that Mordecai shit anyway? Is that his take on like Pink Panther or something? Does that look appealing to anybody?
No.
I just
Strangely enough, I might watch it.
And I think Johnny Depp has entered his late Steve Martin phase.
Well, like Steve Martin, you still kind of pull for him to make that one really good film or performance still.
Here's my feeling on Johnny Depp. I still find him an amazing and an immense acting talent, but I think his brand of fuck you to a lot of people, especially critics and maybe even, you know, diehard film fans, is he took a lot of heat over, I think, the sequels to Pirates of the Caribbean. And he basically said, you know what, if they make 20 Pirates of the Caribbean, I'll be in every single one of them. And I think that's his whole thing. He'll do a couple interesting films, and that's about it.
But I think his problem right now is the fact that ever since he did Pirates, and he's great as Jack Sparrow, and I'm glad he loves the part, but it just seems like everything he's done afterwards has just been Jack Sparrow playing Willy Wonka, Jack Sparrow playing Sweeney Todd, Jack Sparrow playing, you know, the character in Dark Shadows. Like, now it's just becoming very farcical, kind of like Sean Connery after The Untouchables, every role he played was just a variation of Jimmy Malone, nothing that was different like he had in the 70s after he quit James Bond. So I think that's where Johnny Depp's career is at right now.
Well, I can see that.
He's just not stretching himself, that's all.
Well, I'd almost say it's like the opposite. It's like Johnny Depp's gotten into this pattern where he's trying to out-weird himself. So I wouldn't say he's the same in every film he's done lately. It's just that he's trying so hard to be left field. It's like in Into the Woods, for some reason, he's playing his character with an English accent. And it didn't have to have an English accent. None of the casts are stuck in terms of any nationality, because it's a fairy tale setting, right? Some people, the Americans keep their American accents, the Brits keep their British accent, and it's fine, it works. But for some reason, Depp's got to do this thing. It's not just good enough that he's singing and he's dressed like a human wolf, right? Which is the worst wolf costume I've ever seen. It doesn't
even look like a wolf costume. It looks like him just almost like in Cats.
It's a community theater take on a wolf costume. That's what it is.
Well, what do you expect from Rob Marshall?
But, that's all. So that's my take on Into the Woods. I finally saw Starry Eyes, Jeff.
And what did you think?
I thought it was okay. I thought it was all right. I would recommend it, but I didn't think there was anything there I hadn't seen before. So,
I debate. Well, somebody also told me that it's very reminiscent of a horror film from the 80s called Society, which I had never seen.
Yeah, it's kind of like Society, and I saw that comment. That was Adam Friedman, one of our Facebook fans, right?
Yeah.
I saw that comment. If anything, it felt like he was trying too hard to be Ty West, the director of this film. Even like the film critics, like the titles and stuff like that had that House of the Devil thing where he was trying to do the 1980s, 70s titles. But at least when Ty West did it, the context was this is supposed to be an 80s, late 70s style horror film. Starry Eyes isn't supposed to be that, so why do that? It just seemed kind of gratuitous and stupid to me. And the big reveal, I don't want to give it away as to what the big evil is, but I was like, really, that's the best you could come up with? It's basically Rosemary's Baby, right? And I felt that they kind of, I wasn't interested in the lead character being mentally unstable to begin with. I thought it would have been a lot more interesting if she was just another desperately needy actress. And we saw more desperately needy actors and actresses trying to one-up each other in this audition process. There's a lot of things that are too on the nose for me in this movie. Like one of the people that's auditioning her, it was too weird and creepy. It was too on the nose. That kind of thing. And I just thought there was stuff there that they could have handled a lot more subtly and a lot more fleshed out ways to make it a much better horror film. I wouldn't put it up there with things like The Babadook. I wouldn't put it up there with Housebound. I wouldn't put it up there with I even thought, even though I thought it was a terribly flawed movie, I thought Ty West's Sacrament was better than Starry Eyes.
Wow.
So there you go. Even though that's got serious problems. But
I'm just shooting blanks with these horror movies.
Oh, well. It's, of course, you're wrong and I'm right. All right, so shall we get into the news of the past 2 weeks? I guess it's all been about Golden Globes. It's all been about Oscars. I'm quickly looking up first. Let's do the Golden Globes since that's come and gone, right? Did any of you guys watch the Golden Globes? I didn't.
I only saw pieces of it.
I did not.
I saw snippets on the internet after it aired, but... Andre, did you watch the Golden Globes?
I didn't think it was a 3 hour.
No, but I only saw some of the highlights, including Michael Keaton's speech, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, we could talk about what won versus what was nominated, whether or not we thought it deserved it. Boyhood won the Golden Globe for Best Picture. It was nominated out. It was for Best Drama, because Golden Globes has that thing where you have the Best Drama and then you have Best Musical or Comedy, right? So out of Best Drama, you had Boyhood, Foxcatcher, The Imitation Game, Selma, and The Theory of Everything. Now, out of all those films, I only seen Boyhood. So, of course I'm rooting for Boyhood. But Jeff, being more of a consistent movie watcher than I am, did you see all the films nominated? I know you saw Selma.
I saw Imitation Game.
Okay.
I saw Foxcatcher. And what were there any other nominees, or was that it?
Theory of Everything.
I saw that too. So I saw all of the nominees.
Did you think Boyhood deserved it?
I personally, if it was me voting, I would have given it to Selma.
Okay.
But I have no problem with Boyhood winning because I don't have a problem with the film either. So.
Okay,
Are you
here's my 2 cents on the Golden Globes, really quick, and I want to know how you guys feel if you echo the same sentiment as I do. But I feel like the Golden Globes is not really a legitimate award show. And most of the time, it's not even a precursor. It's a very fancy and fun party, and it's the equivalent of the best dressed person gets the award. A lot of the nomination process doesn't make any sense. It's the European Press Association. George Clooney is pretty much the king of this whole thing. He gets a Lifetime Achievement Award. He gives a good speech and so on and so forth. But I can't take the Golden Globes seriously other than it's a way to watch people make fun of each other and make fun of themselves and get drunk on live TV or semi-live TV, whatever it is. And it's just something no matter what, can I ever take it seriously? And if I were a filmmaker, I'd probably go, I'd have fun. But whether to get a Golden Globe or not would be so inconsequential to my career.
Well,
I was going to say I completely agree. By the way, it's a Hollywood Foreign Press Association, not the International Press, but the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And it's a bit of a scam because this whole award thing is a bit of an emperor's new clothes because if it was started by the Hollywood Foreign Press, who are not considered the most legitimate press working in the entertainment business. A lot of people look at the Hollywood Foreign Press with a great deal of derision and just like, who the hell are these guys? They only show up to eat our food at craft services, that kind of thing. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well, my thing is, Mike, you've watched wrestling in the past, right?
Yes.
To me, the Golden Globes are sort of like the television title that they used to have in WWF, World Wrestling Federation, where it was only defended on whatever Saturday morning event was on to get ratings and viewers. And
Actually, that was World Championship Wrestling. That wasn't that. It was in WWF at the time. It was really the Intercontinental belt, but there was a TV belt for World Championship Wrestling, otherwise known as NWA. There you go.
Okay, so yes, again another fact for me, but yeah, it's basically that. It just seems like, it's nice, it's shiny, but again, it's a nice, maybe a little bit of a hint as to what the Oscar nominees might be, but really, it's not something I hold in part near and dear to my heart.
I'm not crazy about any award show in general. I've never been a fan of the pageantry of it all, even though, like, deep down, yes, I would want to win one day for one of my films, but that's a long shot, but that's another story. I feel with the Golden Globes, even just the way Mike described it, I have to say I like it a little bit more than the Oscars, because I feel like the Oscars, it's just so formal and there's just so much of the ass-kissing that goes on there. At least with the Golden Globes, people are a little bit more realistic and get away with a lot of envelope pushing more so than on the Oscar telecast. So, I mean...
No, I disagree. I mean, that drunk behavior, that's about it. But if anything, with the Golden Globes, Andre, there's 100 times more ass-kissing.
Yes, but
I also think I agree with Mike, and also think that I think that it's a weird thing. The Golden Globes tend to be more entertaining to watch because of some of the behavior that happens in the Golden Globes versus the Oscars. But there's just this weird, there's this like stigma of just delegitimacy. It's such an illegitimate award thing, right? You can say what you want about the Oscars and the whole voting nomination process, and yeah, it's completely flawed, and it's worthless getting so caught up over who gets nominated, who doesn't. There's a far greater legitimacy to the Oscars than there ever was to the Golden Globes. it's almost a joke that it gets the kind of airplay that it gets, and so many people get involved in it the way that they do at this day and age.
I feel that the Golden Globes as an awards show is like one giant phony phone call. Either you're in on the joke or you're completely taken with it.
On that note, Andre must have been incredibly pleased that Birdman won Best Motion Picture Comedy or Musical.
Yeah, I have no problem with
it. Although one of the nominees was Pride, and I don't think I even heard of that film. Am I a bad movie fan if I've never heard of the film Pride? Because the other films were St. Vincent, Into the Woods, Grand Budapest Hotel, Birdman. I haven't seen St. Vincent or Pride, but I have seen Into the Woods, Grand Budapest, and Birdman. Grand Budapest is a film that grew on me the more I thought about it. But I have not seen Pride, and nor have I heard of Pride until it was brought up for the Golden Globe.
I've seen it.
Oh, you seen Pride?
Yes, I did.
Did you like it?
I mean, I thought it was a good film. I mean, I don't know. Well, considering how we just dissed the Golden Globes, I can't say. I don't know if it was Golden Globes good. But, I mean, it was perfectly serviceable. You know, it told the history and the true life events satisfactory enough. It was a feel-good film. And, you know, a lot of great talented actors in the film. I mean, like I said, it wasn't bad or anything. I mean, I don't hold it up to probably the same magnitude as the other films it was nominated against, except for maybe Into the Woods, because I had no interest in that film. But, you know.
And yet you went out of your way to see Annie.
I didn't go out of my way. I said I saw Annie. I didn't say I went out of my way to see it.
We'll be the gist of that.
Hmm?
Which infers that you displayed some interest in seeing Annie, whereas you said you had no interest in seeing Into the Woods.
And I stand by that.
Good. At least you own it. I admire that.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out there really quick and just kind of a general comment. One of the shows that, or one of the movies that was nominated for an Oscar that's probably going to get a lot of press because they've got mega movie monster Harvey Weinstein backing it, is The Imitation Game.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it completely interesting that this film, by a relatively newcomer in the directing scene, and I forget his name, you got a great performance by Benedict Cumberbatch and Keira Knightley. But was there ever an instance where a film came out, in truth, you know, we already saw this story like longer, 10 years ago in the film Enigma with Dougray Scott and Saffron Burrows. And all of a sudden, 10, 12 years later, we get this film, and all of a sudden the world is abuzz, and people are talking about this real-life person that was so wronged in after World War II and so on and so forth. And in Enigma, he's not gay. And I was just wondering if we've ever seen anything like that, where we see a movie about a subject matter being put out in a way, and then all of a sudden, you know, 10, 12, 20 years later, it gets a whole new, what would you say, it gets put under the microscope and in such a different way.
We should clarify that Enigma was fictional. It wasn't meant to be. Maybe it was a fictionalized kind of reworking of this historic, but it's not like Dougray Scott was playing Alan Turing.
The character was closely based on him, minus the homosexuality.
I don't know that. I've seen Enigma, and I'm not that familiar with the Alan Turing story. There was, though, however, a very famous, well-received, and excellent play called Breaking the Code, which was about that as well. And that was they did a made-for-TV movie of that. There was another, like the BBC just did like a production on Alan Turing like a mere year ago. So Alan Turing keeps popping up in media, especially within Britain, because they're very fascinated with the subject of Alan Turing and all that stuff. So this is the first sort of like big budget movie release with like, you know, you get Benedict Cumberbatch is like the hot thing right now. Plus it has, you know, other people in it. Mark Strong's hairpiece.
As always. Keira Knightley.
Right. And you saw did you like it, Jeff? I haven't seen it.
Actually, yes, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. It made my top 20, actually, of the year. The film, I guess, what I liked about it was that it's a thriller in all aspects, from him trying to crack this code and build his machine to his own sexuality and getting flashbacks and to his ultimate fate. I think one of the reasons this film was also hot tracked was on the blacklist. At the end of the year, they studio executives and all people in industry vote on the best unproduced screenplays, and this was up there. And like you said, it has Benedict Cumberbatch attached to it, so I think that was why. And also, only recently was Alan Turing really pardoned by Queen Elizabeth, so that was also newsworthy. That helped interest in this project more or less over the years.
But now, would you guys agree? Well, I don't know, Jeff, if you've seen Enigma or not.
No, I've never seen it.
Well, okay, then I'll ask Eric. Would you agree that the reason why Imitation Game is so much more well-received is not so much with the performances, but maybe using maybe half of the film to explore the nature of his homosexuality on his day-to-day life?
Well, for one thing, I don't know if I agree with that because Enigma was a fictional movie. It was meant to be like a thriller, like a fictional thriller. It wasn't meant to be like a history film or a biofilm. Entirely different approach, whether it was inspired by the story of Alan Turing or not. And keep in mind,
it is. No, it is. That's what I'm telling you.
I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying it's an entirely different approach. It was meant to be a fictional kind of thriller variation on that. And you got to understand, the story of Alan Turing's been adapted many times with great frequency, especially within the British media.
You just named a play and you named a television show.
Right, and it's been talked about in all sorts of history things and all that stuff. It's kind of I'm trying to think of what would the equivalent here be? How many times are we going to get like some sort of take on the Civil War, Gettysburg or something like that?
You just compared the Civil War with Alan Turing, a gay guy with the Enigma machine breaking Nazi code. Are you nuts?
No, I'm comparing the idea of constantly adapting. Okay, here's a better analogy. How many goddamn adaptations of Pride and Prejudice have come out within the past 5 years? Right? We've had all these made-for-TV versions, and we had a movie version, a big-budget movie version.
That's also a terrible example. Come on.
It's not a terrible example. It's exactly the same thing.
It is.
This is your premise. Your premise is this. Your premise is this. Is that it's.
Why don't you say? No.
No.
Okay.
This is.
No. Well, let me complete my thought. And then come back. What I'm trying to say is, in terms.
But you didn't let me complete my thought.
No. Okay. Hold on. I'm going to say my thing. I'll let you say your thing. But I'm saying in terms of, and this is where I thought you were going. In terms of a historical figure. How many times have we seen something adapted where it seems like something has less importance, and then as time goes on, some aspect of his or her life takes on more importance and gives it more gravitas? I think that's what my point is, and that's what I thought you were going for.
Breaking the Code, which was produced before Enigma, was both a successful West End and Broadway play, and turned into an equally successful made-for-TV production.
You said
that was all about his homosexuality.
Okay.
Now, my understanding is, I haven't seen Imitation Game, but my understanding is that Imitation Game does sort of soft pedal his homosexuality as well. They don't get into his suicide. Is that true, Jeff, or am I wrong about that?
No, it's not as big of a subject until maybe later in the film, and then they just mention his suicide in the final.
Although now the way history is, if you look at it, it was possibly not a suicide and an accidental death.
Well, they don't go into that. They just say suicide.
Well, if you read about his life and you see that it was possibly an accidental death because he was messing with chemicals that maybe he should have been more careful with.
Well, the whole thing, spoiler alert, is he got arrested for indecency. Okay. And rather than go to prison, he had to agree to take certain medication for 2 years, which was chemical castration. But unfortunately, it slowed his mind and thinking so that he couldn't even do the equations that were in his head. So in the film, it is implored that he has a final meeting with Keira Knightley.
Being implied.
Yes. So then they just say over the credits that 1 year later he killed himself due to, the drugs. And then basically the next thing they say about all his great achievements, and then in 2012 or 2013 he was given an official pardon by the Queen of England posthumously.
Even posthumously?
Yes, I'm just batting 100 today.
Or 1,000.
Again, see what I mean?
No, but I mean, can you guys offhand think of anybody historically, whether, I don't know, I just find it very interesting to see that whether it's a fictional adaptation like Eric had said, or the play and the TV movie that followed pretty close together, and then this new film, I'm just wondering if we've seen any.
Well, I don't necessarily know about, as far as, a true story. I'm sure there is, but, I can't think of it. But, again, more when it comes to made-up stories, of course, there's always 50 million adaptations or 50 million, let's take the point of view of this character instead of the lead this time.
Or an obscure historical character.
It depends on. Well, to you, see, you're talking from the perspective of an American who's just learning about Alan Turing. If you're from Britain, everyone knows who Alan Turing is. Everyone knows about the whole thing. It's like no one in America has really heard of Profumo scandal unless you're an Anglophile. Whereas in England, everybody knows about that, right? So I see what you're saying, Mike, but like I said, there's been plenty of films. There's been plenty of historical subjects that have been the main subject or focal points of films, of plays, of miniseries, of like a 2-hour long featurette on TV or whatever, and they've all even depicting certain times. Lyndon Johnson keeps coming up as a figure in movies, and all that stuff. In Selma, he's a character in Selma. He had his own movie with Michael Gambon playing Lyndon Johnson. All this stuff. You're always going to see different takes on it and different points of view. Some more sympathetic, some not as sympathetic. Some focusing on their personal lives that we never knew about while they were alive. Now we do. Now the focus is on that aspect. I don't really see how the presentation of Alan Turing in The Imitation Game is any different than how real-life subjects have been approached in film and different mediums since they've been doing films and plays and TV shows about these people to begin with.
Well, that was as general an answer as you could ever give me, which didn't answer my question at all.
Yeah, I did answer your question. It's just that you want me to agree with you. That's what you want me to do. I'm not going to do that.
But it's not agreeing with me.
What is your point is that there's no other historical figure who was gay, where they never touch upon him being gay, but they do it at The Imitation Game. That's what makes this the exception or something? Is that what this is all about?
All I want to do is put my head through a window right now. That's all I'd like to do right now, because obviously you're not listening. I was just curious to see if you guys could name any other historical figure like Alan Turing. Well, not like Alan Turing, but how they did that. I thought maybe somebody knew of a couple movies. That's all of a particular.
Did what specifically, though? The fact that they focus on his being gay, or the fact that they have a different take on that historical figure with every movie?
Like, for instance, with, like I said, comparing Enigma, where it seems like it was trying to focus on a thriller without being thrilling, and Imitation Game. And I'm just wondering, is it more important to focus on the aspects of his homosexuality to gain more notoriety for this particular subject and this particular film? Or is it because they had much better actors involved than you had? Because I think not many people will argue that Dougray Scott is a much better actor than Benedict Cumberbatch. So, yeah, I'm just sitting there trying to rack my brain and see what would be... I don't know. I don't know if Lyndon Johnson would be an appropriate simile, but I'm just trying to think to myself if we've seen something like that.
Well, what about J. Edgar Hoover?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of films on him where he's been presented in different lights. There's a what's that
he's
film
only
that
but he only had one film about him.
No, that's not true.
No, about him. So,
no, that's not true.
Well, okay, other than the recent one, what was the other ones?
Larry Cohen's A Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover.
Okay.
That starred Broderick Crawford as Hoover, and Rip Torn was in it.
Now, would you say between those two films, would you say that they were kind of similar in how they tackled the subject matter? Or
Not at all. Hoover is presented as both a villain and a hero in the Private Life or Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover, but not once did they touch upon his possible homosexuality. Not once.
As opposed to the newer film that Clint Eastwood...
As opposed to the newer one. Well, did you see Enigma? Did you think it was a good film?
No.
Oh, Jesus.
It's actually very boring. It's a very boring film.
Yeah.
Come on. Your two leads are Dubray Scott and Saffron Burrows. I mean, give me a break.
It doesn't even really follow the true story. It kind of just takes the idea of these people being a part of trying to break the Enigma code and just does its own fictional thing.
Well, and plus it kind of superimposes this idea that Saffron Burrows is the love interest, the fantasy girl, and possibly a double agent.
Yeah, with Enigma, they try to do like a Hitchcockian thriller kind of thing, you know.
Without the Hitchcock or without the thriller aspect.
Right. But, yeah, winner... Benedict Cumberbatch did not win the Golden Globe, right? For Best Actor in Drama. Was it Steve Carell? I just had the nominations in front of me. I see. It was Eddie Redmayne. Theory of Everything. He won. Yeah. To quote Robert Downey Jr., do not go full retard.
Oh, he went there. And
quick question.
And he did, and he got
what
the Oscar.
What do you guys think of Eddie Redmayne as an actor? Because I find him... I don't think I've really been fully exposed to him, but his face reminds me of a little boy that just is about ready to cry. Every expression.
Well, I've only seen him in one film that I can remember, and that was already a horrible film in the first place, so I'm not the best judge of his acting between that and, was it Theory of Everything? I mean, I guess he did what he needed to do in Theory of Everything, and he's probably one of the more noteworthy parts of the movie. But to me, Theory of Everything is nothing but basically a big screen romance.
I just want to move quickly along because I know Mike needs to get his beauty sleep. I made a mistake. I said Birdman won Golden Globe for Best Comedy. Actually, it was Grand Budapest Hotel won for Best Comedy.
Oh.
So, my bad.
Andre just awoke.
It was nominated, as was Michael Keaton, but Michael Keaton did win for Birdman for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Comedy or Musical.
Well deserved.
So, yes. So, yeah, that's a Golden Globes. Do we want to get into, like, Best Actress?
I mean...
Julianne Moore won. I haven't seen Still Alice.
Neither have I, and I have no interest in seeing it other than that she got nominated.
Why is that?
It just looks very boring. It looks like what I complain about. It looks like the perfect Academy Award movie where it's like no passion, to me at least, looked like it really went into it. It was just like, oh, a studio needs something to put on the roster. What about a drama about a young woman going through Alzheimer's early in life? Okay. But other than that, it just looks like, typical boring film that you won't remember 5 to 10 years from now.
Well, Amy Adams won for Best Actress in Comedy or Musical. I did see Big Eyes. I did see that.
And what is your verdict on that film?
It's one of those films which I would not recommend buying a ticket at a multiplex, but I would rent it. I sat through it. I didn't feel bad for sitting through it. I thought it was entertaining. I think it's forgettable. You watch it, you enjoy it, and then you forget you watched it. It's one of those kind of films.
Would you say Tim Burton's still kind of in a rut, or is this at least a little better than his recent output?
No, interestingly enough, it's the least Tim Burton of Tim Burton movies. He's pretty like straightforward. He's not showing off. He's not trying to do any of this crazy stuff because the subject matter itself is strange enough that he didn't really need to do anything with it. I thought it was really interesting that he cast Christoph Waltz in the role that he plays, which I think is great for Christoph Waltz because he's very good in it. But the character the real life person he plays is very much American.
Okay.
Whereas Waltz isn't, right? But and Amy Adams was good in it, yeah.
Well, maybe Johnny Depp was busy.
Yeah.
Or too expensive.
Well, if Johnny Depp played that role, he would play it as if he was Christoph Waltz. Because Depp these days has to use an accent in everything he does now. But anyway, so that's the Golden Globes. I don't think we need to get into any other stuff. I think we should move on to the Oscar nominations because there's a lot of interesting stuff that happened there. First of all, are you guys happy with what was nominated for the most part?
I was half and half with it.
I'm the same way, half and half.
It's hard for me to say since I've seen so little.
Well, these are the films that were nominated. We have Whiplash, American Sniper, Birdman, Grand Budapest Hotel, The Imitation Game, Selma, Theory of Everything, and Boyhood. Now, out of those films, I've personally seen 4. I've seen Whiplash, I've seen American Sniper, I've seen Budapest Hotel, and I've seen Boyhood. And all of those films are certainly worthy of a nomination.
Oh, well, I haven't seen American Sniper.
Okay, so from what you've seen, what do you hope wins the award?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would my fantasy pick would be Whiplash. But I know it's not going to win.
Same here.
But, Boyhood has a chance if it was I'm actually surprised Boyhood won at the Golden Globes, to tell you honestly. Because knowing how Oscars is weird. Sometimes they go for the obvious pick, and then sometimes they go for, like, the black horse, dark horse. It really depends. The nominees are so eclectic. How do you choose between Grand Budapest Hotel and American Sniper? You know what I mean? So it's going to be an interesting kind of ceremony to find out like who they wind up going with.
Okay,
I would love to.
I want to ask a question to everybody and give me exactly how you feel on this, because personally, I don't really like it. How do you guys feel about so many movies being nominated for Best Picture? I know they've done it now. This is, I think, the 3rd year they've done it. I actually like it where it's 5 films. I don't like that it's so many. How do you guys feel?
I don't know. Weren't they supposed to be 10 nominations at one point? And in the past year, they started whittling it down to just 8 nominations? Or was it always supposed to be 8 nominations?
No, I think you're right. It was 10.
So, yeah, I thought at one point it was supposed to be 10 nominations, and now it's down to 8. I think that started last year, actually. I don't know. It's, it's at the same time, it's like I don't really care about the Oscars in general.
Well,
so I don't know why I should care about whether it's 8 or 5.
Okay, well, my thing is, it's a tighter thing with 5. I think with 8, it just gives maybe some more deserving films at least credit for saying, oh, at least it was Academy Award nominated, because I just think maybe they got tired of hearing every year, why wasn't this nominated? Why wasn't that nominated? So now it's like kind of like 3 pity votes almost, like, okay, we'll nominate you, but you have no chance of really winning.
Before we continue, I just want to acknowledge the other podcast that happens on thisisinfamous.com, Screenshots. It's hosted by our very own Billy Donnelly, editor-in-chief, and co-hosted by Brian McKevitt, a.k.a. Comics. We're just going to run a little promo before we continue.
Be sure to listen to the Screenshots movie podcast at the beginning of every week here on the This Is Infamous Radio Network, as Billy Donnelly and Brian McKevitt break down and discuss all the latest happenings in the movie world. Check it out at thisisinfamous.com as well as on iTunes and Stitcher. Kablam!
Just a gentle reminder to everybody out there listening to the show, We do have a Facebook page, and we do have a Facebook group. The Facebook group, we have a lot of people who are joined that. You can have your own CineFiles discussion, CineFiles-style discussions on that Facebook group. We even show up there and we'll engage in conversations with you. We also have a Twitter account, the CineFiles Twitter account. Follow all of us. We all each individually have Twitter accounts. And when it comes to this podcast, please, please, please download us from iTunes, download us from Stitcher, and comment under iTunes. Rate us. Tell us what you think. Because, if you love us, you want to support us, you want to do that. So anyways, Oscar. So, Jeff, you were saying that you're okay with it being 8 nominations as opposed to 5.
Yeah, if it gets, sorry to say this, but if it gets some well-deserving movies the pity vote or the pity nomination, at least they can always say, well, at least we were Academy Award nominated, which kind of does help, at least as far as marketing, especially since they usually re-release the films if they're not out in general release at the time of the nominations.
So, Mike, why do you not like the idea of 8 nominations as opposed to 5?
I feel like it waters it down a little.
Okay.
And I don't whether you like the Oscars or not, as a film fan, you have to recognize the power of Oscar. And to have your film recognized as one of the, what used to be one of the 5 best films of the year, it carried a lot of weight. And I got really happy if there was a filmmaker or film that really meant something to me or whose talent I had admired. And I see where Jeff is coming from, where you get 3 or 4 pity votes in there to be tossed in. But still, I just feel it waters the process down. That's all.
So basically, you're okay with this. Well, but you know what? It's whether it's 8 or 5, it's still the same, nomination process that, say, gave the Oscar for Best Picture to My Fair Lady, but did it to Dr. Strangelove.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yes.
And I would many examples of the Oscars delegitimizing themselves with certain decisions. William Macy or Cuba Gooding over William Macy. Still stands out in my mind. Or Dances with Wolves over Goodfellas also stands out in my mind.
That's all going to go with the territory. I would say that I kind of see Jeff's argument, and personally, I'm not invested enough in it to care. But it seems to me that by having 8 options now, there's a very good chance that a film like Whiplash or even Boyhood wouldn't be up there. Films that things like that. But at the same time, I also see what Mike's saying, that the problem is that, okay, ideally, theoretically, think, oh no, this gives more films a chance, films that normally wouldn't be nominated. But the problem is, knowing how the nomination process works and how lazy everybody is when it comes to watching the films they need to see in order to vote on it. In fact, a lot of films that get a lot of nominations apparently have never actually seen the films that they've nominated. This actually gives them more films they have to watch and more decisions to come up with to narrow down. And that means that sometimes there's a bigger chance of films less deserving being nominated when other films should have been nominated. But I guess you could argue it both ways. And I don't even think I understand what I just said.
Okay.
I'm actually kind of confused by what I just said. But having said that, speaking of nomination process, there's controversy surrounding not one but 2 films nominated. The first one, let's get into Selma, because that's somewhat less incendiary thing to wrap one's head around, because a lot of people are talking about, it's only been nominated for 2 awards, one of which just happens to be Best Picture. And what was the other award? Do you guys remember what the second award was?
Best Song.
Best Song. Okay, that's right. So a lot of people are crying foul. The nominators are racist. Hollywood's racist and all that stuff. And while, yes, there is a lot of ignorance in Hollywood, don't forget that, films like 12 Years a Slave and stuff like that walked away, with a lot of awards and all that stuff. It seems to me the bigger issue with Selma is the whole issue behind not just the nomination process, but the campaigning for Oscar awards and the whole breakdown if you don't get those screeners out in time, right? Because we've all heard the stories now about how Selma was really late and finishing up the post-production on their film and locking in on a final edit that could be ready for distribution. They got it out there on Christmas Day. That's how late they were. Yes, it was screened prior at the AFI, like 3 or 4 months prior, but that was an unfinished edit. It wasn't locked and ready to be distributed until close to Christmas Day, and as a result of that, they couldn't get all the screeners out in time by the deadlines of the whole nomination thing. So as a result of that, not as many people saw Selma as they should who were on the nomination committees. In fact, they didn't send out any screeners to the WGA for Best Screenplay, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, you said it yourself. The main sin here is laziness.
It's laziness, and it's strange how how it's a lot of money, apparently. A lot of a film's distribution budget goes towards burning these screeners so that people can watch these things from their homes. And I get it. Everyone's busy. There's too many films to watch. You can't go to the cinemas all the time to see everything that could potentially be nominated. But so much effort and so much emphasis has been put on the importance of screeners. It's ludicrous. And therefore, if a film's recognition come award time will live and die by this. And that's apparently what happened with Selma.
Well, it seems like they'd rather would have just pushed it out this year rather than wait a whole nother year to put it out for another award season.
Which is ironic that they couldn't put it out in time and therefore couldn't take advantage of that.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, it leaves it in the state it's in because really I would have ideally liked it to have been nominated for more awards, but the one that I was, I guess, greatly upset that it didn't get nominated for was Best Director, because I thought next to Whiplash, Boyhood, and the other film is escaping me. Oh, Birdman. I thought it was one of the strongest directed films of the year.
The director was
Ava DuVernay.
Yeah, and you know, the Oscars come Oscar season, the Oscar nominators are notorious for selecting a Best Picture nomination without the director of that film being nominated.
Exactly, because even Whiplash did not get a Best Director nomination.
No, it didn't.
But a Best Picture nomination.
That is very true.
But then you have Foxcatcher, which got a Best Director nomination, but not a Best Picture nomination. And trust me, in my view, both of Foxcatcher shouldn't have been nominated for Best Picture or Best Director, but that's a personal view.
Did you think Foxcatcher was overrated?
Yes, very overrated.
Andre, what are your thoughts on all this? Because we haven't heard your 2 cents.
It falls pretty much in the same category as everybody else that's been talking about this. You know, it's a very complicated process that I don't understand. And, you know, I've been listening to the comments, especially from Spike Lee, you know, because he didn't get nominated for Do the Right Thing when that came out. That got snubbed, and Driving Miss Daisy walked away with the Oscar that year. But the thing about it is, who talks about Driving Miss Daisy 20-something years after that film came out? And I think that's the case for a lot of films that, whether they get the nomination or they don't, you know, it's all about, is it going to still resonate long after it's been released? And even as Mike had alluded to, Dances with Wolves losing to Goodfellas, you have to appreciate...
No, vice versa.
Right, yeah. But the fact is, you know, in a sense, you have to appreciate what it took to get a movie like Dances with Wolves made at the time. But long term, it's not the most remembered movie compared to something like Goodfellas, which had a huge influence on many of the directors we have now. So I look at something like Selma, and yes, it's a victim of a late release, probably didn't get its screener out on time for recognition for the Oscars. But at the end of the day, with these nominations that you have now, it's like, how many of these 8 films that are out there are we going to still talk about 10, 20 years down the road?
I can tell you the theory of everything, we won't be.
So saith Jeff.
Well, like you mentioned earlier, Eric, now it's, 40 years later? 40 plus years later? Whose performance are we talking about in amongst ourselves, or are we talking in film school? Are we talking about Peter Sellers doing 3 different characters and doing them exceedingly well in Doctor Strangelove? Or are we talking about the romantic and musical stylings of Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady?
Who's this Peter Sellers guy?
Now, but Jeff, both Jeff and Andre, because you've been accused, especially you, Jeff, by someone in our Facebook group of being our token black man, right? What are your thoughts, having grown up as an African American man, on the whole thing about? Do you think there is a racial prejudice element that prevented Selma from being as recognized as it could have been outside of the whole screener kerfuffle?
I believe, of course, I believe racism does exist in Hollywood, especially, and I feel like I think it might not have been necessarily given as fair a chance as other films, because also it comes down to, I'm a regular reader of movie magazines such as Entertainment Weekly, and then you look at, they do a thing where they take all the reviews from different sites like Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes, and unfortunately IMDb, and you're looking at near perfect scores from Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes. Then you get to IMDb, which is more voted on by audiences and the people, and it's only at a 66 out of 100.
Yeah.
So I find, but I've talked to people whose opinion I respect, who don't say Selma's a bad movie, but they say they can name their problems with it that maybe I'm a little bit more willing to overlook due to the power of the story and the filmmaking, at least personally for me as an African-American watching this film. And also that the fact that this film is directed by an African-American woman and doesn't notoriously have a white savior at its center of the film.
Well, wait a second. If Jeff is our token black guy, what does that make Andre?
He's our new
Mongolian? I mean, come on.
I was referring to a former Facebook group member named Omega Ken, who accused Jeff of being our token. He was just there to be a token black guy, and I banned him because I was like, "Are you saying that Jeff isn't a member of the CineFiles because he doesn't have something interesting to say?" And that kind of thing. And yeah, that's what I was referring to. I mean, Andre, if you want to be our token black guy, we can make you our token black guy if that makes you feel better.
I'm honored. In fact, I'm in tears right now.
And I'll be the token fake Jew, okay? And Mike is our token whatever.
Racist, sexist, you take your pick.
Equal opportunity here, folks. That's all we're all about. Equal opportunity. So the Selma thing, now we move on to American Sniper.
Okay,
nothing
with music.
Sorry. I hit something. Sorry about that.
That was so well timed, though.
As I was saying,
the timing of that was perfect.
That was actually kind of American Sniper music, you know.
Exactly. I was going to say, we got introductions now.
Nice.
Well, it goes back to the wrestling subject that we had earlier.
Yeah. This is starting to give me a headache, even in our Facebook group. And every now and then a film comes out. Say what you will about the quality of that film, but for some reason, people start to go crazy. They just become... They just lose it and become mental cases. Where it's usually this thing where it's like, if you're critical of the film, that reveals that you're being unpatriotic and unsupportive of something that's pro-American. And then you have the other extreme where you have people like anybody who likes this film are warmongers and they're right-wing, freaks and all that stuff. And no one is being sane about actually talking about that film. And American Sniper is this year's take on that. I have not seen American Sniper. So I can't comment on it as a film. I can't comment on the quality of the film. I've talked to people who have seen it. Our own Billy Donnelly did a review on it. In fact, his review, when he posted the link to it on our Facebook group, a lot of strong responses to his review. And you go through all this, and it's like, is nobody paying attention? Can nobody just criticize a movie based on it working as a movie anymore? without being accused of being unpatriotic, without being like non-supportive of the military and all that stuff. Because it's crazy. I mean, okay, Michael Moore made his comment, he tweeted the comment about snipers being cowards. Okay? Poor choice of wording on his part. I get where he was coming from. His father was assassinated by a sniper. That's what he was kind of referring to. But he could have chose more careful words than he did.
His uncle. He says uncle.
Or his uncle. Sorry, you're correct. His uncle. But then you got Seth Rogen, who made this comment simply, just saw American Sniper, reminds me of that Nazi propaganda piece in Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds, and everybody's like fucking hating him for saying that. And it's like, why? Can someone please explain to me what Seth Rogen said is so bad and offensive? What he said had nothing to do with the American military, has nothing to do with our government, has nothing to do with whether he's pro or anti-America. He was making a comment about the movie American Sniper. What is the big deal? I'm off my soapbox.
Okay. Well, has anybody here actually seen the film?
I
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
No,
But
okay.
like a good American, I can comment on things I've never seen before.
Exactly. And to be fair, and to be entirely fair, there are people that are chastising people for liking this film because they're like, oh, you're jingoistic, you're too pro-American, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you know what? You're being just as bad as those people criticizing people for being un-American because you haven't seen the film either. So it goes both ways. But I'm more interested in this whole like attitude now that's developed where we can't criticize a film. We can't say we like or dislike a film without people accusing us of being anti-American or not supportive of the military. It's just, I'm just like, what country am I living to, and why? When did people suddenly become crazy? People who I thought were sane, had like sane opinions when it came to movie discussion, film discussion, in our own Facebook group are doing this.
Now, my question, did this kind of controversy happen last year with that Marky Mark movie, Lone Survivor?
No, but a similar controversy did happen somewhat with Zero Dark 30. Where a lot of people were saying, but it was like a reverse thing where like people on the right, conservatives, are saying, oh, Zero Dark 30 got snubbed of the nominations it deserved because liberal establishment Hollywood are anti-torture and Zero Dark 30 was pro-torture, right? And personally, full transparency here, I thought Zero Dark 30 was an excellent movie.
So did
I got into arguments with people in our own Facebook group saying that it's not pro-torture. Pay attention to what goes on in that film. But, it's films like Zero Dark 30 and American Sniper. I don't know if American Sniper is as good or as bad as Zero Dark 30 because I haven't seen it. But films like that tend to be Rorschach tests for us for some reason, where it becomes more than about just enjoying or disliking the movie on its own terms or merits. It becomes about some political social creed that we all have to like get on a soapbox on and just launch vindictas about every single time it's brought up in conversation. And it reminded me a little bit of like the discussions that are going on with Zero Dark 30. It's kind of similar to American Sniper, although it's kind of, you got there's more voices out there, it seems to me anyway, saying that by not liking this film, you're not supporting our military and you're exposing yourself for being anti-American and not understanding that these guys that this film is about is protecting your freedoms and all that stuff. It's like, why can't we just not like the film if we don't like it? Why can't just leave it at that?
I blame Bradley Cooper for all this.
Well, apparently we're not supposed to blame Clint Eastwood because according to our thread, when Billy Donnelly did his criticism, he didn't like the film. Some guy kept trying to. What is this? Somebody opening up a candy wrapper?
Oh, sorry, that's me. Didn't know you could hear it.
Some guy kept saying, "Well, you keep saying Eastwood, the director Eastwood, should have done this and that." It wasn't Eastwood's fault. Eastwood was a director for hire. He was brought in the last minute by Bradley Cooper. And it's like, it's fucking Clint Eastwood. He's like 80-something years old. He's not going to do a work for hire. And when you indulge in film criticism, especially a film review, you're going to use the director's name as a captain of that ship and give him throw a responsibility on his shoulders that the film didn't work for you. Because the flip side to that, if the film got a good review by Billy, then according to that logic, Billy should not credit Clint Eastwood for the artistic success of that film, right?
He was only a director for hire.
Exactly. He was only a director for hire. And I forgot why I brought that up. Why did I say that? I forgot what the whole point of that was.
Because you like talking about 80-year-old filmmakers.
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, we haven't seen the film, folks, so we can't really comment on it, on whether it works or not. I actually tried. I was going to try to watch it today. I just didn't have any time. If you go to our Facebook group and you go to some of the threads, I actually had to have someone delete a thread because that was one of those films, too, where we had like 3 threads already going on, and then another person tried to introduce another thread, so I asked them to delete it. They said they would, but people kept responding to his thread, and so I had to delete it. And then another guy, a new member, came on and started a whole thread on American Sniper, and I had to delete that as well. And it's just like, guys, chill out. It's just a fucking movie. That's all it is. It's a movie.
And wait till this podcast comes out. There will be yet another thread on it.
Shut up and sing.
Exactly. And and there's no such. There hasn't really been. I mean, there was some film that was produced by the military. Was it the Navy that produced this film? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It was like a year ago.
I know
or
the film you're talking about. I can't remember the title though.
I can't think of a single film that's come out that you could argue is pro-war. Not even a Marky Mark film. What?
Act of Valor.
Is that the one with like all the real SEALs playing roles or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
I haven't seen that.
There's also the Green Berets.
Right, but we're talking about that. That's a long time ago. We're talking about like that was
still
like the
pro-war.
last. Yeah, but I'm talking about in the last, like since MASH. Can you think of any film that's come out that's pro-war, no matter how pro-American military it might be? I can't think of a single film since MASH came out that's pro-war.
Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Delta Force.
Oh, jeez.
Actually, that is very true. Delta Force, you can make an argument, was pro-war. And Invasion USA.
Yes.
Yeah. So I stand corrected. What was a film remade recently? The John Milius film.
Oh, Red Dawn.
Red Dawn. Would we say that was pro-war? It was pro-kicking commie ass.
You know what? It wasn't so much pro-war, but it was definitely pro-Cold War. So basically, Milius was saying, you know something? There's a reason why we've got to, have this military-industrial complex build up. Because these people are going to invade Omaha, Nebraska at any time.
And our high school children will have to fight them off.
Yep.
Just like the Taliban.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not going to invade New York City, or they're not going to invade like a coastal place. They're going to invade somewhere smack in the middle of the United States.
Go in through the back door, or apparently the middle door.
Rob your McDonald's.
Makes perfect sense.
It's a hollow earth theory. It's like the Nazis.
And worse, they'll kill Harry Dean Stanton.
Well, that right there is a crime.
Yeah, that is a crime. That surely is. Harry Dean Stanton deserves to live. Oscars. Any other thoughts about the nominations? I mean, 8 nominations. We kind of ran through them. Anything you notice that's different between the Golden Globe? I mean, the biggest difference is there's no best comedy or musical category, right? And there's no best actor of a musical or drama thing. They keep it pretty. It's just keep it to one thing: best actress. Best actress: Marion Cotillard, Felicity Jones, Reese Witherspoon. Has anyone seen Wild?
Nope, no. I haven't, at least.
Best actor: Michael Keaton, Eddie Redmayne, Bradley Cooper.
Yes, I didn't see the movie, but that upset me.
I would say that Jake Gyllenhaal got snubbed for Nightcrawler.
I felt Nightcrawler got snubbed a lot.
Yeah, I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was very good in that. I thought he was very, very... But there were a lot of strong performances this year. It's a tough call.
Yeah, but also Renee Russo not getting nominated.
Yeah, she deserves some sort of nod. That was her best role in years. I mean, seriously.
Exactly.
Meryl Streep. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Meryl Streep, best supporting actress because she's in Into the Woods. She wasn't that good in it. It's like whenever Meryl Streep's in a movie, it's like, she's in. You have a lifetime membership award to being nominated whenever you're in a movie that comes out during Oscar season. So they just give her the nomination.
Pretty much.
She's like
pretty
a
much.
Fault nominee.
On that note, gentlemen, I am going to have to part ways.
Because you're a child and you need to go to school in the morning.
Wah. Parting is such sweet sorrow.
So Michael Foltz is now leaving the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. He needs to get his beauty sleep. He's got to work in the morning. He's got a kid he's raising, and, we understand.
I bid you, gentlemen, adieu, and once again, it was all my pleasure.
Enjoy your work tomorrow.
Yes, and tonight, dream of non-gay Alan Turing, who wasn't real to begin with.
Ta-ta.
Alrighty, so I guess that's it. I guess I don't have anything else to say unless you guys have something else you'd like to bring up. We've gone through the Oscars, we've gone through the Golden Globes. Is there anything that came up that kind of tickled your fancy or that you got angry about or anything like that you can think of?
Not that I can think of right now, no.
Okay. All right, so we'll just...
I'm good.
Say our goodbyes then. Okay, cool. I think we've exhausted what we can talk about. I feel like my throat or my voice is about to give, actually. So I'm going to have to wet my whistle as soon as I get off this computer. But guys, thank you very much. Let's first thank Michael Foltz, posthumously. Now he's not with us. He went to bed. And I want to thank Andre Joseph. Thank you, Andre, co-host of CineFiles, producer, the director of... What's your specific title? Is it director of AJ Epics?
Yes, you can follow me on Coast Blog, where I usually write my reviews and my underrated actor blogs. And you can also follow my film work at ajepics.blogspot.com.
And that's Epics, E-P-Y-X, right?
That's correct.
And Jeff, you're still keeping the CineFiles blog going. More power to you, buddy. You're updating a lot of stuff in great frequency. What did you write about recently?
Well, actually, I haven't been on the blog recently only because of a death in my family. But
much condolences, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, the last thing I remember putting up there was a review of The Equalizer, the Denzel Washington movie, obviously. And this upcoming weekend, I'm probably going to be adding a bunch of more posts, including my official top and worst of the year.
Cool. And I should say, next week, folks, we shall be shooting our first video episodes of the Cinephile in a while. Our break is over, so stay tuned on what those topics are going to be. I'm loath to announce what topics are going to be, but something always happens where we wind up not taping that third topic or something, and winds up getting postponed to the point where we never do it. But we do have some topics set. Don't ask us what's going to be yet until we have it in the can, and then I'll tell you what they're going to be. But yes, we are slated to shoot some new episodes next week, so stay tuned on that. I'm Eric Cohen, producer of the Cinephiles and co-host. Please like us on Facebook. Please follow our Facebook group. Like us all individually on Facebook. Follow our Twitter feeds and the Cinephiles Twitter feed. If you got Google Plus thing going on, we're on Google Plus. And after you've listened to this podcast, please comment and rate us on iTunes. You can also download us from iTunes. You can also download us from Stitcher. And check out the other podcasts going on thisisinfamous.com. Check out Billy Donnelly's podcast he does with Brian McKevitt, a.k.a. Comics. His podcast, Screenshots. It's another film-related, pop culture-related podcast. They tend to delve more into, the big-ticket comic book stuff, that kind of thing. Whereas we tend to be more the cinema snob-ish kind of thing. But sometimes the streams cross. Sometimes they cross in Ghostbuster terms. And there's another podcast, The Main Event, that's Token Tom Clark's wrestling-related podcast. You should check that out as well. So, yeah, that's it. So, good night, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Jeff and Andre. Thank you, Mike. Sleep dreams. And until next time, bye-bye.